But we will discuss that in a little while. First, we have to talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, Putin, his Putin, his mouth. So on Bill O'Reilly, before the Super Bowl, Bill O'Reilly did an interview with the president, and the president had this one moment that really did start a lot of controversy. Here he goes. This is cut number one.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right?
Major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very
He's a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers in America.
Well, take a look at what we've done, too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, mistakes are different than...
A lot of mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So a lot of killers around, believe me.
Okay. So let me tell you why I think this stinks, why I don't think it stinks as much as it might stink, but why I really do think it does represent a problem for President Donald. The real problem with this is the ignorance behind it. See, I think what Trump is doing, I really do think what he's doing is you can't call a man a killer and then sit down and talk with him, and I think if he were a typical statesman, what he might have said was, look, I have to sit down with this guy. I'm going to leave the name calling to you, but I'm going to sit down with him and talk, and it would be a good thing if we can get together. Let us start off on a good foot. The thing that really worries me when he says stuff like this is that worries me that he believes them. Here is Senator Ben Sasse, who has just been an excellent spokesman for the conservative point of view. Let's listen to his response because it is 100% accurate.
Let's be clear. Has the U.S. ever made any mistakes? Of course. Is the U.S. at all like Putin's regime? Not at all. The U.S. affirms freedom of speech. Putin is no friend of freedom of speech. Putin is an enemy of freedom of religion. The U.S. celebrates freedom of religion. Putin is an enemy of the free press. The U.S. celebrates free press. Putin is an enemy of political dissent. The U.S. celebrates political dissent and the right for people to argue free from violence about places where our ideas are in conflict. There is no moral equivalency between the United States of America, the greatest freedom-loving nation in the history of the world, and the murderous thugs that are in Putin's defense of his cronyism.
This is so true, and it has been a problem for a long time on both the left and the right. I mean, I remember Clint Eastwood, one of my favorite filmmakers. He made one of my own books into a movie, True Crime. I owe him a lot, and he is one of the great artists. But he made that movie about Iwo Jima, where he showed Americans committing atrocities, killing prisoners and all this stuff, as if that were the same as the massive program of atrocity that the Japanese did during the war, and as if we were fighting for the same things. It matters what you're fighting for. And what Ben Sasse is pointing out is that our country actually stands for something that is good, and Russia has never stood for that ever. It has never stood for that ever. So not only does Putin, poison his political enemies with stick jamming radiation into them so that they die a slow, painful death, and I don't see, Marco Rubio doing that to Nancy Pelosi. I know we may have dreams, but that's not what happens, and it's not what any of us really want to happen. That's not the country we want to be living in, and so it's a real problem with Trump because it suggests to us that maybe he really thinks that's true. In the same way when he attacked Ted Cruz's father, saying, what was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald? Because he read about it in that stupid paper. What's the name of that paper? The New York, not the New York. It's not the Examiner. What's the name of the paper? That's not the Inquisitor. It's the Inquirer. Got it. It's a room full of people. See, if you go to ZipRecruiter, this doesn't happen. The Inquirer, he thinks the Inquirer is a respectable newspaper. And I think that is a real problem. Now, here's Mike Pence, the grown-up in the room. He goes on TV, the morning interview shows, and he tries to clean it up. This is cut number 6.
I simply don't accept that there was any moral equivalency in the president's comments. Look, President Trump, throughout his life, his campaign, and in this administration, has never hesitated to be critical of government policies by the United States in the past, but there was no moral equivalency. What you heard there was a determination to attempt to deal with the world as it is, to start afresh with Putin and to start afresh with Russia. Look, we face very, very serious dangers in the world.
But that's
and
why the
United States, in many ways, has created a vacuum in the world as we've backed away from the world stage. What the American people see is President Trump leaning into these relationships, bringing a healthy skepticism to all of it, particularly when it comes to Russia, but saying, look, if we could have a better relationship with Russia and with Putin, and not getting lost in the usual debates, but to say we're going to take an honest effort
Mr. Vice President,
to advance America's interests in the peace and security of the world.
So that's like Pence in his job as the Trump whisperer. You know, Trump comes out and says this stuff, and then Pence comes out and tells us what he really meant. You know, and I do have a feeling that is to some degree what Trump means. I mean, I do have this feeling that Trump feels that there is a relationship to be had. I think he's wrong about this, by the way, but you know, fair enough. He's going to try to have a relationship with Putin and team up with him to take on ISIS. He's said this repeatedly again and again and again, and you know. He is trying to set that up so that when he sits down, he won't be sitting down with a guy that he's called a murderer, even though Putin is a murderer. That is what Putin is. That's what he does. But, you know, the moral equivalency it's nonsense. It's slandering America. America has never been that country ever. And remember, it's the left this is the stock and trade of the left. And Donald Trump has always been a man of the left. He's always been a Democrat, and he's sucked up that stuff. Let's go back. You know, I ended last week by talking about seeing Donald Trump at the National Prayer Breakfast and how out of place he was and, you know, kind of a fish out of water, and how he made that unfortunate comment about Arnold Schwarzenegger, which wasn't a bad comment in itself. It was merely the tone of it. But let's not forget what Obama did at the National Prayer Breakfast. I think it was just last year when he said this he was talking about all the violence that was being committed in the name of Islam, which he didn't mention. No, he did mention it in this speech. I'm sorry. He was talking about all the violence that was being done in the name of Islam. And then he said this. This is cut 9.
The profound good, the strength, the tenacity, the compassion and love that can flow from all of our faiths, operating alongside those who seek to hijack religious for their own murderous ends. Humanity's been grappling with these questions throughout human history. And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
I mean, now listen, Obama took a lot of flack for that, and he deserved it, but he took it from the rebel press. He took it from us, the conservative press. My only objection, look, Obama deserved taking flack for those stupid comments of moral equivalency, of making a moral equivalency between America and its Islamic enemies. That's absurd. He deserved to take the flack. Trump is taking some flack for this. He deserves it too. The only difference, and I think it's a difference worth noting, is the tone of hysteria that is what the press is doing. It is what the press is all about. It is creating this atmosphere of hysteria and crisis. I mean, you read the front page of the New York Times at this point, it looks like we're, living in Nazi Germany. It really does.